Welcome to the Femsplainers. I'm Christina Hoff-Summers.
And I'm Danielle Crittenden, and let's toast our glasses, because this is...
1 year anniversary, people.
1 year anniversary. They said it wouldn't last.
They had no faith in us.
Yeah, because we're women, right?
Women.
We're women. You can't do podcasts. People don't want them.
And you can't cooperate. You start fighting. We didn't have any fights.
We haven't had any fights. We've had disagreements, usually over what to drink.
Yes.
But today I am submitting
to
pink champagne.
Pink champagne.
But normally I don't like bubbly.
There it is.
And but
I'm communing with the gods.
This is Christina's. This really is your favorite after Kir Royale. But we've had quite a year. We've had amazing guests, and what I thought I would do is plan a little surprise party for this first of fourth season. 1 year anniversary / birthday, call it what you will, and have some of our favorite guests just show up for a few minutes and we can reconnect. So some of our great Femsplaining gal pals are going to call in.
The Femsplainer Hall of Fame.
The Femsplainer Hall of Fame. And we're going to catch up with them. So I'm very excited. Although I think the first person who is going to call in...
A mansplainer.
Is a man...
No, it would be a man to go first.
Exactly,
just saying.
Exactly. But it is one of our favorite men.
Mm-hmm.
It is David Frum, who has gotten in trouble on this podcast for revealing his poor Valentine's Day plans, giving one of our hapless listeners advice that almost caused a rift in their marriage.
You know, he's not allowed on YouTube anymore, except if he takes a pledge he won't give personal romantic advice.
but we did have fun on our 30th anniversary wedding. That was a wedding anniversary last June. And so we're going to bring him back and just say hi. And we want to thank all these guests for helping us grow the podcast.
I was amazed anybody would come on. You know,
had no faith.
I didn't quite understand the world of podcastery.
All right. Well, let's bring on David.
Welcome to the Femsplainers, David. It's our first anniversary episode, and we're so happy to have you back.
So I am, as usual, in a Canadian airport, so I'm sorry I can't celebrate with you in person.
I was going to say, where are you, David, or should that be a question a wife should never ask a husband?
but the truth is, you already know. And
Yeah.
even if I didn't tell you, you would be able to figure it out.
Because she has a microchip in you.
Yeah, that's right.
We can track you on her phone.
We have this game. We have this game where I will have a one-sided phone conversation and not tell Danielle whom I'm talking to. And the question is, how long will it take her to figure out who I'm talking to and what we're talking about?
Oh, probably like 3 seconds is my average, I would guess. But, okay, so you came on, before you came on, we reminded people that you'd done this great 30th wedding anniversary podcast last June and more recently on Valentine's Day. Do you have any romantic advice for podcasters who want their podcast to last 30 years?
but in 30 years, are these podcasts going to be like streaming through our robot glasses directly into our brains? Well, I mean, look back 30 years ago, and we were listening to AM radio.
Well, I was listening to FM because I think I'm more highbrow than you, David.
we were listening to the same thing. We were listening to the Jazz Hour on CJRT.
That's true. Toronto Jazz, late night, 11 p.m. both on our bedside radios, not knowing that we would meet and then confess our addiction to this. What was his name? Glenn Woodcock was the host?
Glenn Woodcock.
That sounds very Canadian, that
very
romance.
Canadian. But I think for podcasts, the question is, can you last one more season? And I mean, it's like with all of us in this new era, this is a question, and I know you stress this, of we're either going to have much more intimate and connected relationships with our audiences, or we're not going to make it. But the old days of we talk, you listen, that's over. This is now very much a two-way conversation, very participatory. That's what you've been doing, and that's why Femsplainers is going to be such a dynamic success.
Going to be.
Well, do you listen to podcasts other than the Femsplainers, David?
I am not a big consumer of podcasts. I'm a huge consumer of audiobooks, but usually I don't listen to podcasts.
Yeah, when you come in and David and he's got his phone on speaker, you're listening to some incredible, solemn voice reading aloud some
statistics about the Panama Canal.
Right now I'm listening to Andrew Roberts' excellent Churchill biography.
Oh, I am too. I started it last night.
Yeah, and that is good. And you've been, what I love is you sometimes read these for me. So you've been telling me all the bits about his champagne budget and
his actually, there's a wonderful quote that was new to me that I hadn't heard before about Churchill's fondness for pigs. So a dog looks up to you, a cat looks down at you, but a pig looks you in the eye. You feel you're an equal.
I'm just at the part, and I wish I'd skipped it. It just hit the utter cruelty in his childhood. His mother was so indifferent, and they finally visited him because, he might die. And they went and visited him. He was almost dead from pneumonia.
Because all the
but don't you think that 100 years from now, people are going to be reading biographies of the great people of our era, and they're going to explain how this person managed to achieve anything in life despite the smothering, inescapable presence of his parents. He just would want to be at school just for 5 minutes. Let me do this one paper on my own, and the parents, were barging in.
Let me climb this one, jungle gym on my own. Well, David, you are flying home, which is great. So we get to see you after the podcast. And
we're drinking the pink champagne I brought you.
Yeah.
Oh,
we
that was a very good champagne. Thank you.
We'll bring some home.
Thank you.
We might save you some, but Zoe is with us. Zoe Appler is in the studio with us, and she's drinking it too. So
it's true. I'm participating today.
Well, happy birthday, anniversary. Congratulations on this great milestone.
All right. Thank you, David, and safe travels.
I don't know if that's what I'd want in my brain.
Not the slate.
Not that.
Anyway, okay, so our next guest to come to the party is going to be Mona Charen.
My great friend for life, because we were on a cruise. I won't say what cruise, but we were speakers on a NRO cruise. And it was wonderful in every respect, except that the ports, it was around the Caribbean.
Yeah.
And I don't know, maybe it was the season, maybe it was the ports. But the ship was beautiful, and we found all sorts of places where we could go and have little drinks and hors d'oeuvres and things. We'd go off the ship, and it was just this madhouse of, curio shops and people and
the sort of
people.
port ships that...
Yeah, and you couldn't get anywhere you wanted to be because there wasn't enough time. And we realized after 1 or 2 ports that we just would not leave the ship.
The pool was empty.
Pool was empty, the hot tub was empty, and there was one bar that was open, and we bonded over not going out.
I remember I accompanied David. What do we call them? Like think tank cruises, or a lot of magazines and think tanks. They do this, and maybe we'll have a Femsplainer.
Oh my God,
that would be
do that.
Fun. But they have panels, and I had a great time because I just got to hang out, and do fun things and hang out by the pool and stuff. David just lived in fear of being stopped every 4 feet to be asked a question about some great, national problem. So he ended up hiding in the cabin. well, we went and enjoyed the facilities. But anyway, well, let's bring on Mona. She is part of National Review. She does a National Review podcast, and we're going to talk about her book, Sex Matters.
Yep.
Welcome to the Femsplainers. Thank you for being one of our very earliest guests, and actually a guest in our first live event that we did here at the American Enterprise Institute. It was season 1, episode 3.
Hi, Femsplainers.
Hi.
Great to be back. It's great to be back. You guys are terrific. Congratulations.
Well, thank you, and thank you for contributing to the success. You came on... I know that it was just before your book came out on Sex Matters.
That's right.
And tell us about, because you've been going on campuses, you've been probably facing the same incredible adulation that Christina faces on campus.
What happened?
Tell us, give us a quick summary of the book, and then tell us what's been going on.
No, go right to the campus. What happens?
Yeah, so all those rose petals that they throw in my path go up. It's just hard to take. So, look, the book is called Sex Matters, How Modern Feminism Lost Touch with Science, Love, and Common Sense. And it is a review of where I think feminism went wrong. In that sense, it's somewhat similar to books that you guys have both written. But mine went into a little bit some different avenues. I talked a lot about the biology and the science about sex differences, because I noticed when I was talking with students that to do the research for this book, I noticed when I was talking with students, I would say things like, well, men tend to be this or women tend to be that. And I would get these
gasps,
stares of the jaws would drop. What do you mean? I mean, that's all socially constructed. So I thought, okay, let's just lay out in one chapter the science, because there's so much confusion about that.
Well, and more science now, right? Like way more science given what we're able to genetically research than 20 years ago.
Well,
I was right.
That's correct. That's exactly right. And there are whole medical journals now that are dedicated to studying sex differences between men and women, because it has all kinds of medical implications. Men and women respond differently, for example, to different kinds of medications, different doses of medications. There's a lot of, I enjoyed writing this chapter. I found it intensely interesting. Even when it comes to doing organ transplants, it turns out that it matters, whether it's a male or a female.
We want ours to be more attractive, and that we have higher aesthetic specifications.
I need a younger face implant, but not a male one. Not a male one.
Not a male one.
It is incredible how gobsmacking younger people find this, and to stress, it's not to say that biology is destiny, but if you don't reckon with biology, you will not have your destiny that you want, because
that's right.
Not living in truth.
Right. And then I also get into the different choices that women make voluntarily when they live in free, wealthy countries. And it turns out that women who have more choices because they live in a free, wealthy country, or because they themselves are higher income, that the more choice women tend to have, the more they choose a somewhat traditional role within the family. They tend to prefer to work part-time when their kids are young, for example, whereas men don't tend to express that preference, and so forth. And then I hit very, very hard, and that's, I think, the beating heart of my book is a plea for men, women, and everybody in our society to take desperately seriously the decline of family life in our society, because I do believe that this is at the core of so many of the social ills we're experiencing now, the alienation, the rise of diseases of despair, the rise of depression among the young, suicide. There are a lot of consequences to the decline of family life, which has been I'm not going to mince words. It's been a complete disaster, and it was brought to us by feminists who rejected family life outright and said it was not conducive to women's happiness. It was a trap and a snare, and that has turned out to be a complete misreading of the situation, and what has led to tremendous, tremendous unhappiness.
Well, Mona, I have a question, because about a year and a half ago, I was at the Stanford Law School and debating two law professors, two scholars whom I like, but they disagreed with me about the wage gap and this and that. And I mentioned that the one thing we could do that would strengthen women economically and protect girls and women from predation. I mean, the best situation, not a perfect one, but the best overall, is an intact family. And
that's right.
Protective for the children, for the wife, and conducive to well-being compared to other arrangements. And I just said that right now we have a sort of epidemic of single, mothers, and that this, while one particular mother, can succeed, and, I'm not saying that it implies failure. However, it's dysfunctional at a social, to have a culture of single parenthood. And there were
Correct.
Gasps in the audience.
Yes.
And this was, and I'd said many controversial things, but the idea that kids need two parents, that was regarded as an unspeakable heresy by many in the audience. Do you?
Well, is this
Oh,
to go
and
back
can I
to
just
the
mention?
to go back to the original question? I mean, we're talking about sort of basic ideas. As Orwell said, it's the job of the intellectual to restate the obvious. Pretty much every generation. But tell us about the campuses. So, are you getting these gasps, or is it the rose petals? Like, what is?
Oh, well,
what is happening?
it's a combination, I would have to say. Look, there are some students who are open to hearing what I have to say and who will even come up afterwards and thank me for coming. So that's refreshing. There are others who come, girded for battle. I was amused to see one young lady at Georgetown who showed up in a T-shirt that said, "Humorless feminist."
That's your
a
profile on
tautology.
Tinder.
That's a tautology.
Looking for another humorless feminist.
How many feminists does it take to change a light bulb?
Oh, that's
That's not
funny.
Right. Not funny.
My friend Alan Kors actually told that to a feminist colleague, that joke, and she said,
Yeah.
she thought about it and she said, "It's not funny, Alan." I mean, never mind. I mean, how absurd. Anyway, go on.
All right.
But in response to what Christina just said, I just want to add something because I know that this is considered shocking, and this is the biggest problem that we have in this country right now is that there's so much resistance to fixing what has gone wrong with family life. It's the anyway, so one of the ways that I argued it in my book is I quoted somebody that nobody expects to see quoted on this subject, and that's one Barack Obama.
I knew it.
Who was very, very clear on this when he spoke to students, when he spoke to black colleges, when he said it over and over again that what kids need is two parents.
Right.
And he spoke very honestly about the fact that, of course he did well, obviously, duh, right? Even though he was raised by a single mother, but he said, I always, I suffered by not having a father, not having an involved father in my life. And he said, and I wanted to be sure that the one thing I would do for my girls was be there for them. And,
and also the black family went through this trauma, which is now affecting all of us first. That was
precisely.
Yes.
That's exactly right. And I talk about that in the book that, you would have thought that after we did an experiment in this country, not on purpose, obviously. It was a natural experiment where the black community was the first to sort of be out the door in terms of discarding marriage. Mm-hmm. And what happened? You had neighborhood decay, you had rises in unemployment, you had high crime, you had dysfunction. And so what did we do? Did we look at that and say, maybe that wasn't such a good experiment? No, the whole rest of the country, Hispanics, whites, everybody except Asians. But everybody went right after them and said, that's what we're going to do too.
Well,
and
I don't think they said it quite that way. There were a lot of women who said, you know what? Damn that man. I just want to be here in my crummy apartment with screaming children and no prospects. I think it's just, as you said at the beginning, our society is facing sort of seismic changes that we don't really understand, and maybe until they've happened to us. But
right. But I will note that this week we saw a study that showed that compared to all of the other OECD countries, we have the highest rate of children growing up in broken homes.
Yeah, when they shack up and don't get married, they stay together. The couples in Sweden and France.
That's exactly right.
I have one question, and it's sort of a random idea, but the one possible good outcome of the Me Too movement and there's a kind of panic around sexuality, and I think that's bad. But one possible bright side is that, do you think this is good for marriage, and that it's just going to be so dangerous to have affairs in the office or to have professors were constantly having affairs with students?
Hey, maybe that's what kept marriages going back then.
I'm saying. And sex in general is so unpredictable. So maybe, and this is probably not the outcome that some of the advocates envision, but maybe it's going to be conducive to more stable marriages.
Well, that would be, obviously that would be a great outcome if it were to go that way. But I'll tell you, the reports from young people are a little worrying in that these days, if you look at the behavior of high school and college students, they are masturbating with their screens rather than being involved with other people.
Image. Yeah.
Well,
no, we've talked about that. It's a big problem. But Mona, we're going to toast you. We're clinking glasses to you.
We have pink champagne.
And
great to talk to you, gals.
Yeah, and we'll come back on.
And bring your dog. Bring your dog over to play with Izzy.
But not in the studio.
I will.
Not in the studio.
You can come to the studio.
No, you cannot come to no dogs anymore in the studio. That went wrong. All right, Mona, thank you. And thank you for being a Femsplainer.
Thank you, Mona.
I'm thrilled. Congrats again.
Thank you.
Bye.
Take care, gals.
Bye.
Bye.
Well, Danielle, you're sort of my best friend, but you have...
Sort of.
Well, just because there's competition. Because Mona, she has a dog that she wants to bring places with Izzy. 2, we bonded on that cruise, which I talked about. And 3, we were having the same experiences on campus. So, I don't know. There's a contender for my affections.
Oh, I'm going to be dumped. It's going to be some Mean Girls episode.
It's Mean Girls.
I hate that.
Yeah, it's going to happen. Je t'adore, Mona.
Yeah, fine.
I don't mean it.
I love you too, Mona. But now that you guys are going to conspire against me, I'm just.
We're not, but I am going on a cruise in August.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
For
NRO, up the coast of Canada.
Hey, oh. Then you need a Canadian Femsplainer along.
Well, I would have you. You are invited.
I don't think we could share a cabin, though.
No.
Okay, so now we're moving on to Julia Yoffe. Julia was season 3, episode 7, talking about this book that she is writing that is fascinating. It's part autobiographical about growing up in her early years in Russia and then becoming a refugee. And then, as she will talk about, the modern day feminism in Russia. And anyway, she's just a fascinating person, fascinating storyteller, and also just a great gal pal Femsplainer.
Just a great chick. And fun and unpredictable. And a great, I think she has a fine mind.
And she dances at parties, which I really love.
She dances at parties. And she doesn't like to talk about this, so we won't this time.
What?
You have to listen to the podcast before if you want to hear all about her Twitter life. But she's controversial on Twitter. I think she may be at times she's been ranked the most controversial person on Twitter.
It's an interesting. We did talk about. You have to go back to that podcast because I don't want to raise it with her again.
But she does have a tweet this week where I find it a little upsetting. She says, "Why do people care about the royal baby? We fought a whole foundational war over this," and she's kind of getting ratioed.
I have to admit, I have mixed feelings about the royal baby, and I'm a Canadian. But yeah, anyway, let's bring on Julia.
Welcome, Julia. Hi, Julia. Welcome to Femsplainers.
Hi, Julia.
Hello.
Thank you also for being our guests in the past and contributing to the success of the podcast. So we're very grateful. Except you're not in the studio this time because the last time you were here, we had Russian mules, but you are missing out on
Veuve Clicquot.
Rosé.
Pink champagne.
Ooh, yums.
Yeah,
delicious.
You should have been here, Julia. I'm sorry, you're missing the party. So, can I say this? Is your book finished? Because last time you were on, we had.
You can't ask an author that.
I know. I want to.
Hold on, I'm breathing into a paper bag.
Yeah,
I was.
I
Wasn't
know.
it, Julia? Wasn't it due around now?
Yeah. Soon. And I have to turn it in the next 3 months, and it will be finished then.
Oh, you got tons of time. No.
No. I have no time, and I need to write all the time.
Do you write quickly, or do you write how many words?
It depends. Sometimes I'm a fast writer, sometimes I'm a slow writer.
Yeah.
There's an old saying. I think it's A.J. Liebling who said, "I can write better than anyone who writes faster." and faster than anyone who writes better. So, Julia, you were writing about your growing up in Russia and coming here as a refugee, but you also write about other things. Have you found your political views, social views changing in this past year? You know, when we started the podcast, it was very much, Me Too was a part of it. It was a new way to talk about these issues. But how has it affected you?
Yeah, I wouldn't use the term woke, but I think that what I've realized, and it's not the last year, but I think longer, since I came back to the States in 2012, I think I realized that there were a lot of histories and experiences that I wasn't very up to speed on, just because of, I think, of the way I grew up, and it was a generally pretty sheltered place. And I think a lot of immigrants aren't really aware of the kind of history they're opting into when they come to America. And so, you know, when I a few times was called out by it, and sometimes I just realized that I did not understand the context. And I just started reading more and asking more and listening more. And I think it has definitely affected my views, but I think that it has just deepened views I already had. What I don't like about the last couple of years is that it has pushed, I think the Trump era has pushed people into boxes, and people want to put people, especially journalists and writers, into political boxes even more than they did before. And I think it's hard to be somebody with, let's say, more heterodox views.
More nuanced
so I see
views.
more nuanced views. So and I think that in part that's because my experience doesn't fit neatly into a lot of the kind of right-left paradigms that
I still think of you that way.
About.
Don't you, Danielle? I mean, I never know what to expect.
That's true. No, you've never been. It's like when you talked about your experience in Russia and experiencing anti-Semitism, but not really understanding it at the time. That, whoa, this is anti-Semitism, you know. And you sometimes have to go somewhere else or get older or process those things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think it's also
like you're not an ideological person. Your family fled ideology.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, and I find myself clashing with people both on the right and the left, which makes me think maybe I'm doing something right. But I think I try to listen more and read more, and not assume that I'm always right.
That's a bad sign.
I think, you know what, Julia, because I feel like my worldview has been sort of gradually, just by age, and then radically upended this past year of just changing your views on a lot of things.
Wait a minute, what you're changing your views? Are you becoming a militant feminist?
No, but here's what I think we need the word for, because woke, as Julia says correctly, has not the greatest connotations, but could we have a word like wake? I'm wake as opposed to woke. Could we do that?
No, we can't do that.
It's like I haven't gone fully woke. I'm just like more open than I was.
There was a great essay on the subject, or either an essay or a Twitter rant. I can't remember, but
I only read Twitter rants. Don't bother.
I think it was by Sam Sanders of NPR who said, let's retire the term woke, because it's not like an end goal or a finished state. It's a process of becoming more awake, becoming more aware, more sensitive, more perceptive. And I don't think being sensitive to other people, what other people bring to the table and their baggage and their background, I don't think that's necessarily a terrible thing. I think, especially in the age of Trump, sensitivity has gotten a bad rap, that it's, you're a snowflake, et cetera. But I don't think it's the worst thing in the world to listen to other people, and to, even if you ultimately don't agree with them, to consider where they're coming from.
Well,
and you would include conservatives and liberals for that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
the old term for this was when a conservative began to take on more liberal views. The media would say, the more liberal hosts and commentators would say, "Oh, that person has grown."
Yeah.
Yes, they're growing. So now it's more like waking. But what is it? Just before you go, what is the thing maybe that worries you most in this coming year? Since you're a Jewish woman of Russian descent, I'm sure you're worried all the time.
Yeah, I once had a young man that I briefly dated who was not Jewish, just kind of offhand said to me, "Why are you so worried? What's the worst that could happen?" I was like, "Yeah, I'm a Russian Jewish woman. Do you have 3 hours?" That can happen.
Is there any one thing, or maybe something happy? Okay, let's go counter to type.
I think
Is there something good you think will happen in this coming year?
Something good. I mean, honestly, I'm excited for the 2020 campaign. I'm excited to cover it. I'm excited to finish my book and cover it. I think it's going to be a really interesting process.
You're optimistic?
I'm not. I'm never optimistic. I worry that either Trump wins or he loses and doesn't concede, and we have to figure out a way to scrape him off the walls of the White House or create a second White House or something. It's something I was worried about in 2016, because he was already flirting with the idea of not conceding. And, I was traveling in the South for the covering the election, and there was already talk of, guns and civil war. And I worried that everybody's so keyed up that.
No, this is going to be the new thing. People aren't going to concede. Like the Stacey Abrams, has she conceded?
I think so. I think she started something too. But, well, Julia, I'm gonna try to be optimistic too, but I want to thank you again for coming on today and coming on in the past, and
come on again.
Oh,
we like you.
I would love to come on again and talk to you about my book, which is actually less about partly about my family, but more about Russian women and Soviet feminism and Russian feminism and how it's evolved in a way that's completely different from the American way and kind of what we can learn from it.
Okay,
So,
when is the book coming out? So we can all look forward to it? Allegedly.
Are those
Winter of
the feminists
2020.
that take off their clothes?
No. Well, that's like those are Ukrainian, and
yeah.
that's later. But Russia was the first country in the world to give women the right to vote. It was the first country in the world to legalize
Ahead of
abortion.
Australia or New Zealand? I
Yeah.
mean? Oh my
Yep.
God.
All right, you're digressing, but when is the book coming?
Okay, but I'm just
Me?
late winter of 2020 or spring of 2021.
Okay, so spring of 2021.
21.
Springtime
For Julia.
Okay, let's hope it's not that springtime. Julia, thank you. We toast you. We
Yes.
toast you with our
Cheers.
pink champagne
Cheers.
and look forward to
God
having it in the flesh with you. Bye.
Au revoir.
Love us. Bye.
Well, I always love having Julia on. But now we're going to Dr. Deborah So, a member of the intellectual dark web.
The good doctor. Blonde Web.
And she was a fabulous guest, and she's always very informative about...
And always controversial because actually she picks up on a lot what Mona was saying about
sex differences.
Sex differences that are biological. And we had her on in season 2, episode 5.
You're good on these seasons and episodes.
Yeah, I have an external memory drive called Zoe. Right,
I think
Zoe?
Deborah was one of the first guests that I ever worked with. I think she was either the first or second when I first came to work for Femsplainers.
Right. And
Yeah.
she's, amazing. She's
Awesome.
She's courageous. She's very scientific and solid. We talked about Thebes. Oh, speaking of the Sussexes, maybe they've had a Thebe.
Is it Phoebe or Thebe? I thought it was
Or
a baby.
I want to call
Not
it
a baby, not a...
Phoebe sounds cute.
I
It
know,
sounds
that's
like
true.
a cute little
Yeah. So a Thebe. Okay, give the Sussexes this. They announced a boy. Not following the Monty Python a little early to be assigning gender differences.
Yeah, what's up with that?
But do you think he'll be a boy raised with feminine toys? And anyway, this is what Dr. So, the good Dr. So, talks about all the time. And she's written recently an article for Quillette, which is an online journal we both love, about the biological
underpinnings of love and lust.
Love and lust. And there is apparently a biological romantic love.
Yeah.
So we're going to talk to her about that and catch up.
Hi, Dr. Deborah.
Hi, how are you guys?
We're great. It's the Femsplainers here.
I think she knows. We're toasting you. It's our first anniversary. And of course, your podcast was so wonderful and contribute to the success of the whole show. And so welcome back.
Thank you so much for having me. It's such an honor, honestly, to be included in your anniversary episode.
Well, you are part of the intellectual blonde web, so
we just wish you had
you
in studio where we could offer you some pink champagne.
Yeah,
Danielle's been overserved at this point.
No, it's Christina who was worried about it. Anyway, Deborah, you have come out. We talked before you came on. We talked a little bit about what you'd said on our last podcast, but you have come out most recently in Quillette with this amazing article about the biological underpinnings of love. And do you want to talk about that a little? Because we're intrigued.
Yeah, so definitely. I am now a columnist with Quillette, which I'm very excited about. And so my most recent column was talking about the difference between sex and love. Because I think culturally, when we think about sex and love, they tend to be considered as one and the same when they are quite different in some ways. And I think it's important that we're able to talk about those differences and also more broadly just talk about sex and in terms of what a person's preferences might be, what a person's expectations might be in the context of a long-term relationship, especially if it's going to be monogamous.
Well, don't most people want monogamous relationships?
I would say monogamy is still predominantly what people want, but polyamory is growing too. Open relationships are becoming more popular, definitely. I mean, me personally, I am monogamous, but I do see a trend of non-monogamy becoming more popular.
Ooh.
Wow.
Whoa. Well, let me go back to the happy Disney part of this, and then we can get into the alternative Disney.
Sure.
One of the things I liked about your article was if you have been lucky enough to fall in love, not just love, but fall in love, it's almost a drunken state.
Yes.
You are half out of your mind. Actually, when David was on the podcast, my husband, talking about our anniversary, he said, that state of in love, like people shouldn't be signing cell phone contracts.
Right.
Like you're really kind of out of your mind. And whether that transitions to an enduring love or what you might call a monogamous love or not, but there really does seem to be a mind-altering state to the in love, and it is different from lust, correct?
Definitely. And I mean, there are many parallels in some ways to taking drugs because the effects in the brain are similar in that, you experience euphoria. Common side effects of being in love also include sleeplessness, loss of appetite. All you think about is the other person. So it's really fascinating. There is quite a bit of overlap between when someone's in love and the brain regions involved in that feeling and sexual arousal, but it's not 100% an overlap.
But let me ask you something. Does that initial obsessive, ecstatic attraction, does that do brain damage? Because it's so intense.
I hope not, because it's a great feeling.
I know. It's the best feeling. Isn't it the best feeling in the world? But it can't last.
Can't it?
I wish there was some way that we could take something and feel that way. But I love being in love. I write a lot about sex, but I think, research on love is just as important as looking at human sexuality.
Oh, I think it's more important, isn't it?
Well, go to the non-Disney side of this. So you say there is this brain state that we'll call being in love. And by the way, people, if you're thinking of getting married, you haven't felt this, don't do it. So go on to these other states. So, yeah, I mean, famously, that drunken moment doesn't, last over 30 years. It can change, it can deepen, it can do other things. Do you have insight into the monogamous versus the polygamous brain? Polyamorous, whatever you want to call it?
Polygamous.
Well, polyamory refers to, so say within consensual non-monogamy, so this is when partners will say up front, we allow each other, or maybe even only just one of us, because not everyone wants in a relationship where they are open. Both partners don't necessarily want to go outside of the relationship. But with consensual non-monogamy, they have a conversation and say, okay, either we will be, polyamorous, which is based predominantly in romantic relationships with other people, or you might have swinging where it's predominantly physical. Open relationships are a mix of both. So that area of research is growing. We don't know as much about it yet. But in terms of, say, I talk about how monogamy may not be something that is necessarily inherent to humans. And in fact, monogamy is quite unusual among mammals. I think the statistic is something that only 3% of mammals are monogamous in their parental
Swans.
investment. And yeah, it's very, very low.
Swans aren't mammals.
That's true.
What about gorillas?
No, yeah.
Well, wait, we're closest
Dolphins are
to...
mammals.
But dolphins are male. They go and
They're
get
rapists.
They're rapists.
And I think I had a bad
Dolphins are, like,
experience,
hypersexual.
suppressed memory of a dolphin, but we'll talk about that in another episode.
Whoa.
And now that I think about
So,
All right. So, sorry. Okay. Yeah. Of course, swans are mammals.
well, I was just saying, and in the column I also mentioned that
I said
it's very
she has too
natural
much to drink.
Sorry.
Sorry,
very
Deb.
natural to feel. Sorry, I'm ruining your girl fest right now. I feel like I'm being very technical. And
No. Be technical.
You're being kind of mansplaining.
No, she's not. Stop it.
Just kidding.
Yeah, I know. But just that, it's natural to feel attraction to other people, even in a monogamous relationship. And, with rates of divorce being quite high, I think it's important that people, before they decide, if they're going to get married, to talk about what you want, the kind of sex you want to have. Are you kinky? Do you want to stay monogamous? All of these things, because I think ultimately that's what's going to lead to greater happiness and more fulfillment, and avoid the sort of darkness that Danielle, you mentioned.
That's kind of hard to discuss in the mad...
Like a job interview, except drunk.
Well, are you currently madly in love?
I'm not. I'm single, but I'm dating.
Ah.
Well, it's also, I think, to your point about monogamy, I mean, well, until recently, we were all living longer, although American
Life expectancy
lifespans are going down. But
Not that much.
Still, generally speaking, to previous centuries, we're living a lot longer. And maybe is that having an impact on monogamy?
Yeah, how can you stay in love for... I mean, my parents did. My parents had, we celebrated their, 68th anniversary.
But is that is it biologically related, do you think? Or is, as you say, there's just not enough evidence?
Well, I think it speaks to maybe cultural trends, that it's not as taboo to be divorced as it used to be. And I think also people are becoming more aware of, what's important to them and the things they want to prioritize in a marriage. And I think also the availability of partners has changed a lot in terms of with the internet and what the dating pool looks like now with things like dating apps. I don't know that there's that much research, particularly in how those things may affect the longevity of marriage. But I would suspect that probably has an influence, because what we are looking at, the landscape today, is very different from, even I'd say 20 years ago.
Yeah. Are there differences between men and women? Like, is it the women who are saying, I could go monogamous, and the men?
He's saying, I kind of like polyamory.
Yeah. Is there any of those kinds of differences?
I would say, well, because sex is a greater investment for women than men from an evolutionary perspective, women, in my experience in terms of research I've done too, women tend to favor monogamy more than men on average. Not to say that that's the case for all women or that all men are not interested in monogamy. There are definitely many men who are. But from an evolutionary perspective, we would expect that because it's a greater investment for women if they're sexually involved with someone, if they become pregnant and they're going to raise the resulting offspring, that monogamy would suit them more. Whereas men, they're wired to want to, spread their seed So non-monogamy might be something more enticing to them.
But on behalf of the bad side of women,
Oh, no.
couldn't they have evolved a capacity to profess a commitment to monogamy, but be furtive and polyamorous?
Asking for a friend?
No, I'm actually asking because I'm having problems with Izzy. I thought it was monogamous.
You or her?
I don't know.
I have to sit down and have a conversation with Izzy about this and find out what's exactly going on. But yeah, I've heard theories like that where, and it might be beneficial to women also if they, cuckold their partners. So they may become pregnant by one partner, but have another partner who maybe has more means available to help raise that child. So,
well,
a lot going on.
I've become aware of, not in our household, but there are groups like swingers still exist where couples equally participate. But here is what would upset me, I think, is it's one thing to say, okay, we're going to have sexual relationships outside of the... David Frum, if you're listening, this is not acceptable. But in theory...
in your airport in Canada. Moving on.
There is, okay, well, we've decided that we want to be together, keep our houses together, but, we're going to just go separate ways on that front. But for someone to have a romantic interest outside of the marriage, I think that's more threatening, weirdly. Do you agree? I mean, it means that they're not getting something spiritual, and I think that's... I don't know why I weirdly consider this a bigger threat, but I would consider it a bigger threat.
There was a study actually a couple of years ago that showed that they asked men and women what they would find more distressing. So this is roughly paraphrased, but basically women found the idea of emotional infidelity more upsetting than physical, and men found the reverse.
Oh, that's it. That's so interesting. That's so interesting. So men don't care if some swain comes in and plies you with cocktails and tells you pretty things, but if the woman sleeps with the man, that's too primal. Much. That's like primal.
And on the other hand, she doesn't. Maybe if she found out you were with a hooker and on your trip to Port-au-Prince, or I don't know where, but then she finds out that you have an office wife.
Yeah, no, I think
I'd hate the office wife.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, totally. All right,
but
well, Deborah, thank you so much. We can't wait to have you back on. Thank you for being part of this podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I miss you guys.
We miss you, and we'll see you. We have to have another Colette hookup.
Ooh.
Oh, no, I don't mean, no, not meet up.
Whoa, what happened when I was
God,
there?
I shouldn't have told. I'm sorry.
All right. Toasting you, Deborah. Thank you.
All right, I'm toasting you too with my fizzy water. I love you guys.
Okay, bye. Thank you.
Bye.
So Deborah was interesting. Polyamory.
Well, I was hoping that we'd get a very straightforward scientific answer that...
Love isn't scientific. And that's what I've been trying to tell you. And that's why we're not communicating.
I know, but I thought it'd be
I'm madly in love with you, and you... Okay, all right, we'll leave
Christina, we have to leave. We'll come to...
Well, you have a competitor, because I love Izzy too.
No, but I was hoping there'd be kind of a definitive answer that there's romantic love, and if it's just about sex, that's one thing, and men and women are different. It wasn't, of course, that simple, and as you're right, is there really science to romantic love? The poets have tried to solve this, and they can't, so...
Which poets?
Everybody. But now we're going to have the fabulous Tina Brett on. We had her on. She was our first guest. She was our first guest, season 1, episode 2. Because of the first episode, we didn't have a guest. It was how we met and what we drank. And so Tina phoned in, and she had just had her book come out about Vanity Fair, the Vanity Fair Diaries,
which is wonderful, by the way.
I love that book. Wonderful, and she's just like one of the great commentators. And she just finished her 10th anniversary Women in the World Summit in New York. So we'll talk to her about that. So let's welcome on Tina. Tina, thank you. Welcome to our first birthday. You were one of the very first Femsplainers in season 1, and we're very grateful to you for helping the podcast be a success. So welcome, and I wish you were here with our pink champagne. But you don't drink.
You don't drink? Oh, God.
I don't drink, but I'm toasting you. I can't believe it's a year. It's just become such a kind of buzzy thing. So well done.
Thank you. And thank you for the 2019 Women in the World. I couldn't be there this year. This is Christina speaking. But I watched several of the videos, and it was fantastic.
It really was a powerful event, I have to say. It was an incredible 10th anniversary that we celebrated. I mean, we had, Oprah, which, of course, is a kind of everything can happen. Now we can just go home.
Exactly.
We had Stacey Abrams. We had Hillary, Glenda Jackson. It was really an amazing event, actually. It really was. Very exciting. It took me a whole 2 weeks of sort of hangover afterwards to come down from it.
I can imagine the adrenaline of just running something like that. But, there's several segments that I saw. The one that just touched my heart was that fantastic woman. She's been there before. Masih, I can never say her name.
Oh, she is amazing. Masih Ahmadinejad. She's an amazing Iranian activist. Yeah, she's incredible.
She was so inspiring.
She had to leave Iran.
She had to leave Iran, and she is the voice for these oppressed women in Iran, her My Stealthy Freedom. Anyone out there, Google My Stealthy Freedom and watch everything about this fantastic dissident Iranian activist. But there was one moment where...
It's amazing. And, it was her lawyer that was recently sentenced to 37 years in prison for flouting, rules in Iran against women. And she's been sentenced for 37 years and lashes every month. I mean,
lashes.
It's inconceivable to us to imagine. It is so barbaric. And we never really hear about it much. And I really wish that we could keep ourselves a bit more focused on these kind of issues that are happening, like in Saudi as well. That's the stuff I try to bring to the stage.
Well, you do that, and there was a
Saudi
moment.
Panel, actually.
There was a moment where Masih Ahmadinejad looked at the audience, Americans, and she said, I don't want you to cry for us. I don't want you to save us, but I want your solidarity. I want you to hear our voices. And there's a sense in which Americans don't hear their voices. I mean, even
well, they don't. But the thing is that if it's put to them, they will. I mean, we had this amazing young woman on opening night, the sister of the Lujan, her name is, who is in prison in Saudi for having supposedly flouted the women's driving law. Even though they've now said women can drive, they didn't like the fact that she was an activist, so they put her in prison. She's been there already for two and a half years. She's 29 years old, and her sister came and talked about, how desperate it is that her sister is in this situation. She's been waterboarded, she's been tortured. And she said, one of the activists who came after her said, if you care about Lujan and if you care about these women, I want you all to take out your keys from your bags and rattle them tonight in the theater in solidarity of the women who have been imprisoned for driving. And the whole sort of theater kind of started to shake, and people took out their keys and they shook them, and it was a very, very moving moment. And people were really moved and appalled. They just didn't know this was happening in Saudi.
Well, Tina, I don't know if this has come up, in the context of this amazing summit that you do, but there are now voices over here in the women's movement that are suggesting that Western women should not, we have no right to comment on these other cultures. It's kind of like a Lady Bountiful view, who are we to say what goes on in Saudi culture? And I mean, this seems to be the opposite of, what
that
you
is
do.
Ridiculous. That's just an excuse for being absolutely
callous,
frankly. I mean, there are so many women there who want, as Masih said about the Iranian woman, who want our solidarity, who want someone to listen to them, who want to be heard. They're repressed. They're not allowed to say what they want to say. And we need to be there for them when they have the courage to say it.
Well, it's part of this staying in your own lane thing that seems to be arising, that if you're, a white woman, you can't comment on a black woman. If you're a Western woman, you can't comment on a Saudi Arabian woman. And I'm very disturbed by that, because one of the incredible things that you do is you not just bring these people together, but you introduce us to these stories and put everything in our own culture in a kind of big context.
Frankie, well, that is actually totally the mission. And I've got to tell you that when I move around in the hallways in between the show, and I hear people sort of in the lines things, and they say and I'm hearing, the thing I hear the most and which I much love is when they say, oh my God, I never knew that was happening to the Muslims in China, or I never knew that was happening to the women in Saudi. And that's what we try to do, is to sort of dramatize the stories of women who kind of live behind the lines of the news. I mean, and far from it being, well, they just, they're fine in their own cultures. They're not fine in their own cultures. As soon as they get their own voice, look what's just happened in Sudan. I mean, nobody was fine in Sudan, but they weren't able to say anything. And when finally they came out against, Bashir, and he's gone, and there's a freedom of speech, and it's not going to last, and it's going to turn bad, but it's very moving to see what happens when freedom actually reaches people.
Yeah. But it's unique what you do, because you bring to American women. The times that I've attended your conference, I see these women and I feel like I'm meeting the Elizabeth Cady Stanton or the Sojourner Truth, but of Egypt or Saudi Arabia or of Cambodia.
I know it's very moving. And quite honestly, I mean, American women spend an awful lot of time, very often, complaining about things which, frankly, in the context of what, Lujan is experiencing in Saudi is really just so minor.
Well, we do have manspreading on the subway. Don't diminish it.
Let me do, actually, to that point, a quick turn, because I know we have you for limited time, which we're grateful. The Me Too movement, last year when we were there, we saw Asia Argento on the stage. What has happened since then? What do you think? I mean, it was an incredible panel. We were very distressed, or remain distressed, about the Harvey Weinstein case. But have you seen a change from then and now? Momentum?
Well, I think in the case of Asia Argento, she got embroiled in a very unfortunate and distasteful turn of events, where she was then accused by a young man of having, totally inappropriately slept with an underage young man, and that was, of course, devastating to her particular cause as a speaker out, as it were, against Me Too. Even though I think that situation was complex, it was nonetheless incredibly distressing. Incredibly, also with her that night was Anthony Bourdain,
yes.
and of course, shortly afterwards he committed suicide, and you just think, oh my God, 12 months, what has it wrought, But I think in terms of the Me Too movement, I think what is good is that we've moved into now a much more sort of solidified pivot. So you can have such a thing as a solidified pivot, but. Where people really have understood, I think, that this is not just a kind of a fad, but that women are really finally really demanding not anymore to just be, quote, in the pipeline towards the seats of power, that terrible word pipeline, which male CEOs love to use about women in their company. Oh, yes, we have a great pipeline of women. Frankly, that pipeline
is
loaded.
Yeah.
It was like a python's, neck.
Yeah.
That was just overgorged with rabbits.
Yeah.
And it just kind of blew up. And, women are saying, look, F the pipeline, boys.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like, we are here and we're ready. I mean, Susan Zirinsky, 68-year-old, she finally gets to run CBS News after being sort of not running it for God knows how many iterations. Yes. And, I think women are and I think that what you are seeing is that, I mean, look, you could have plenty of, I'm sure, women leaders who are not doing a good job, but I do believe that women leaders do lead differently, and I think that's very interesting. I mean, we saw what happened with Jacinda Ardern, in the wake of the horrible terrorist attack in Christchurch, New Zealand, and she, when she put on the hijab and she instinctively made that gesture of sort of solidarity and tolerance, it was a very kind of womanly response that I think was a very different kind of response to what you're seeing from so many of the sort of macho leadership.
You don't think Donald Trump would show that kind of sympathy? He put on a hijab.
Totally mad on him. Let donning a hijab and saying, we are all Muslims now. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure that, his hair would probably be torn off when he took it off. I mean, no, I think, it's a very different jam, quite honestly. And I think, look at how Nancy Pelosi is defeating Trump with the sort of, there's something to be said for literally what, the old-fashioned expression of kind of like woman's wisdom. I do think, frankly, that, that a woman's role as nurturer, mother, sort of caregiver in the house, looking after either kids or old parents or siblings with disability, the disabled one in the family. It has always, traditionally, until very recently, fallen to the women to play that role. But I also think it's given them things that maybe men don't have, which is a sort of a somewhat more collaborative and nurturing approach, and a kind of sort of tolerance and calm. I mean, in the way Nancy Pelosi handles Trump is, she doesn't get agitated, she doesn't get abusive or rude. She simply treats him like one of her sort of how many ever it is grandchildren, who's just unruly and has to just like toe the line and like get in line. And it's amazing. He does not. Notice he does not taunt Nancy Pelosi. She's one of the only people he does not taunt.
Yeah.
He does not really. He doesn't write horrible things about her and give her a nickname, whatever. He's scared of her. He understands that she's not impressed, and that sort of somehow brings him to heel. It's probably the kind of role Melania plays with him. I suspect that's the role she plays too, which is to basically sort of facing him down and just not taking it.
Yeah. Well, I almost wish that Nancy Pelosi were running against him, but I worry that I hope that she can control, and it's possible she can, some of the radical Democrats who are taking the party in odd directions, and it'll make it easier for him to win a second term.
Well, I know. Well, I think she understands that too. I think she's doing a very good job of trying to, discipline her unruly caucus, which, is her second flank of problems.
As you say, it may be the analogy, it's her daycare center is to go expanding.
Exactly right.
But
throwing the rattles out of the cage.
Exactly.
And I think that every time Ilhan Omar makes some completely ill-advised kind of, soundbite, she just like throws her head, I'm sure she has her head in her hands and says, for God's sake, focus, everybody. It's like she talks about the impeachment, which is like, can we all just focus here?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think she's right, actually. But yeah, no, it's a big distraction for her. There's no doubt about it.
Well, just to wrap this up, I think what you were saying about Me Too, and we were talking about Women in the World with Asia Argento, it's like, it's no longer about single people or cases. And some of these women were like the early revolutionaries, and the movement becomes bigger than that. And that's been of great interest here. And I think everything you say about that is right. But just before you go, you started a podcast. It's a little competitive. It was a little competitive, but okay.
TBD.
TBD podcast.
It's really fun.
Are you enjoying it?
Yes, it's great. Yeah. I have enjoyed it, and obviously I'm nearly up to my 34 of the first season or something, and probably take a hiatus in the summer. But yes, it's enormous fun. It's just total indulgence as far as I'm concerned. I just get to talk to all the smart people who pass through that I know, and I've enjoyed it. I love the sort of low pressure of a podcast, the fact that you can honestly have a conversation and you can go on a bit and nobody seems to blame you for it. And yeah, it's a nice medium. It's by far the most enjoyable medium of anything out there right now.
Right. And you don't have to write, which is even better.
Do you love doing yours?
Yeah, we love it.
And we can drink.
That's not attractive to Tina, though. But interesting.
That's the only, Tina is perfect. But I just don't understand how you can't drink.
She has an
allergic reaction. I'm just allergic to alcohol. I'm just allergic to alcohol. I get the hangover without the bit in between.
Not fun.
It doesn't have appeals to me. But no, it is nice. It is like having a drink with a friend in the evening.
Yeah.
It's great. And I get to catch up with all kinds of people who I wouldn't normally see because I can corral them into my podcast.
Yeah.
And you're right. And there's no time limit. It's very intimate. Well, it's a great podcast. And thank you so much for checking in and being part of our success. We really are grateful to you, and we toast you.
Thank you.
And I want to shake my keys for those Saudi Arabian women, and I
shake our keys rather than toast you. All right, thank you, Tina.
All right, lots of love.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
I worship Tina Brown. She's so brilliant. One of the great women of our generation, whatever that is. But the fact that she makes it clear that in many parts of the world where women are struggling for basic rights that we take for granted.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, she kind of... I'm sure she wasn't even aware of the Roxane Gay view of the world, which we've discussed recently after your time in Australia.
That's just not our business. We have nothing to say about it.
Yeah, too bad you're getting, you are getting jailed or whipped for having been raped. And that's what's so, as you said, refreshing about these conferences is it just introduces you to the whole world of what's going on with women, and it brings you together in this closer community that you can express solidarity. But now we're going to move on, because quite the party here. Emily Yoffe has been on several times.
The greatest, maybe the greatest Femsplainer.
I don't think we should play favorites, but
we won't play favorites. But
Emily, you can ask her.
An awesome
anything.
babe.
Yeah, and one of the great journalists. She's
funny and a truth teller.
And just yes, she's. What is the when someone can talk about multiple subjects? It's like being polyamorous, but it's about
she's polyamorous without the amorous, but just polymorphous perversity. No,
intellectual. I don't know. Anyway, let's just bring her on. Welcome, Emily. Emily Yoffe, welcome back. Thank you for joining us on this special birthday edition. We toast you. You're one of you've been on several times and just one of the great Femsplainers on really every topic.
Femsplainer of all
thank
time.
you, and congratulations and happy birthday.
Thank you so much. Well, we've got you for a brief few minutes, and we wanted to talk to you about your recent article in The Atlantic about Al Franken. So should this guy I feel very strongly that Al Franken was forced out early, and maybe if he'd dug in his heels, he wouldn't have had to go, and the Democrats wouldn't have set themselves up for what will be next is Biden. Because if Al Franken is guilty of violating Me Too and these, new sensibilities, then how can Joe Biden run for president?
It's such a mess, and I totally agree that if Franken had toughed it out, I'm quite certain he would still be a senator today. Or if he wasn't, there would have been a thorough investigation, and we would have felt, okay, 50 more women have come forward, which they haven't. But this was a real missed opportunity by the Democrats to say, you know what? This is what due process looks like. This is what fairness looks like. We are taking these accusations very seriously. We are taking his right to defend himself seriously. And in the end, we hope we have a fair conclusion. One side won't be happy, but at least we can agree this is what process looks like.
And you know what he would have been found guilty of? A comedian behaving in a boorish way.
Yeah, his
years
seemed
ago
to be the least
offensive.
I mean, it's insane that he was forced to give up.
It's insane,
his Senate seat
and he's a brilliant guy, and he could have been a real match for the current president.
Yeah.
Well, a lot of people feel that way, and this case continues to echo through the 2020 election. Kirsten Gillibrand can't get out from under the fact that she was the first to call for his resignation. Now, I'm assuming she thought this is going to help launch my presidential bid. But a lot of people remain very angry about what happened to Al Franken.
Absolutely, as they should. I mean, she was really the chief accuser and executioner.
But this was at a moment, too, lest we forget, where men who, there were obviously, and we talked about this with you on our episode about the Harvey Weinsteins and the kind of monstrous ones. But then there were these guys, the shitty media men's list, who it wasn't even clear what they had done. And has it ever come to light? Blanking Prairie Home Companion.
Garrison Keillor.
Yeah. Has it ever come to light what Garrison Keillor did that merited the entire Stalinist erasure of all his episodes on NPR? I mean, something sort of never came out. So this was at a moment of very harsh, quick judgment and punishment. And Al Franken, that's when his happened. And if the Democrats, I guess, were to maintain any quote-unquote integrity on this, he had to resign, unfortunately.
Well, you're right. We don't know any details about Garrison Keillor, but the Franken event was just at the height of this frenzy.
Panic.
And, the Kirsten Gillibrand has said, I may have called for his resignation. He's the one who resigned. That's absolutely true. But he was put in an untenable position. 35 members of the Democratic caucus then piled on and called for his resignation. I mean, he might have been stripped of his committees. He was bullied, really, and pressured to leave. And you have the interesting contrast of Justin Fairfax, Lieutenant Governor of Virginia, who has two accusers. He said, I didn't do it. Who knows what the ultimate outcome, but he's still in office. And Gillibrand and many other presidential candidates immediately piled on him and said, you're out too. You need to resign now. And he said no. And actually the polling is going his way, with people saying, well, we don't know exactly what happened, and we don't think he should be forced out of office until we know.
Mm-hmm. That's kind of a good thing, if too late for Al Franken. But how does it impact Biden, do you think? Because Biden's been through, as we've discussed, the hair-sniffing, weird, touching stuff.
Okay, I want to know what you two think about the accusations against Biden.
I think that he's a person who promoted a lot of the ideas that have now come back to haunt him. He created a monster that's now attacking him. And we haven't seen the end of this.
Absolutely. I totally agree. I wrote this for Politico. This is the world he wanted. And if Joe Biden were either a student at college or a faculty member, believe me, he would be hauled up before a Title IX committee. He'd probably be out. So to me, the real twist here is, he's been criticized for his level of apology to the women. Well, where's his apology to the men who have, there are literally male students and faculty members who have either been expelled or lost their jobs over the kind of kiss he is accused of giving. And his accusers all say, we're not saying he committed sexual assault, he just was too touchy or handsy.
Yeah.
That kind of thing can end your career on campus.
Well, let's just say the Democrats go all hypocritical and Biden gets a nomination and, he digs in and, like Trump, just, whatever I did, but I'm running. Maybe this would be a good thing. You could look at it as like, from the student's viewpoint is, let's end this madness. Maybe it's not it's not the world he really wants. It's not the world any of us really want. And, maybe Al Franken should run again and just prove.
I met him recently and told him to run again, but there's some reason he can't.
but maybe it's a corrective.
Danielle, Biden has had no, revelation on the road to Damascus. Mm-hmm. He's not saying, you know what, this thing went too far, and I can testify personally it's gone too far. There's nothing like that. He has not said one single thing to indicate that he knows there needs to be a course correction on what the Obama administration, and he was the point person for this, instituted on campus. So he can't deliver that message.
All right. Well, any uppers you can leave us with, Emily?
Any good news?
Come on, give us something to hope for.
I'm the bad news person.
All these. It's like with Julia Yoffe, all these pessimistic Jewish women.
I found the bright side, the happy side of Emily. You didn't even tell us this. You wrote a book about dogs.
Oh, yes. That's happy.
Did you?
Well, no, it wasn't, because it was primarily about my insane beagle, but it had a lot of happier reporting about dogs.
I thought you were going to tell me, that was a different person, because I ordered it, and I ordered it today on Amazon because I want to read this. It was either $53 or $3.
Which means it's a very, very popular book that was published a few years ago.
Christina, I can give you a copy.
Oh,
I knew you would say that. You know what? everyone out there, when your friends say they'll give you a copy, no, I order the book on Amazon. No matter what.
$53.
No, I paid the $3 and then $7 for postage.
Emily, before you leave, what's the title of the Beagle story?
What the Dog Did.
Oh, I remember. Okay.
No, and then the subtitle's funny too.
Tales from a formerly reluctant dog owner. I'm now on my third dog.
Oh, okay. Well, that's happy. That's optimistic.
Okay.
We can love dogs. We're all behind that.
We're dog forward.
We're dog
Sniffing.
forward. All right, Emily, thank you
sniff.
so much. Hope to have you on many, many more times. And we toast you with our pink champagne
Yes,
and
with our
wish you
pink
were with us.
Me too. Thank you. Many more happy anniversaries to come.
Thank you. Bye, Emily.
Alrighty.
So we're moving from Emily Yoffe to Mandy Stadtmiller, who we had on in season 1, episode 6, when her book Unwifeable had come out. And this girl, Mandy, and she would say this herself, was an absolute hot mess for many years. And what was so refreshing about this book was her candidness about...
She's so honest, and she's so beautiful and funny and
funny,
earnest
and just like...
and human.
If you think you did something embarrassing, I did it to the power of 10, 9 times. And you just reminded me that Emily Yoffe used to write maybe the best advice column
of all time
ever, called Dear Prudence. And it was for Slate, right? And she gave it up. And I was devastated. But you thought, wow, if you could get Emily Yoffe together with Mandy Stadtmiller, Mandy would have avoided
all of these, collisions with madness.
But then we wouldn't have had Mandy. So let's bring her on.
Yeah.
Mandy Stadtmiller, welcome back. We're so glad to have you here, even if you're not drinking with us.
Yeah, but I'm, in some alternate bizarro universe, I am out there falling off a bar stool after my third shot of Maker's Mark. So you can know that.
Metaphorically, because of course you don't drink anymore. But we just heard that Unwifeable, your wonderful book about your crazy, uproarious career, which forced you in the end, or not forced you, but you wisely gave up drinking and did become wifeable. It's now out in paperback. And you have a recent article out on Medium, which is called Why is Everyone Succeeding But Me? And about overcoming envy. Why do you need to overcome envy, Mandy? You're so successful. What is going wrong here?
I am a classic child of crazy people. And so, I'm constantly trying to receive validation through external means rather than, knowing that it's something that can only come from within. So I've had that problem my whole life. And I wrote this piece originally for XO Jane back in the day. That piece right there, I elaborated on it and I worked quite hard on it to make it kind of just this, manifesto of inspiration. And it's gone sort of viral and people have been profoundly moved by it because I think a lot of people get stuck in their own heads.
We all are insecure and messed up. And I mean, not me exactly, because I don't care anymore. I've had enough of this. We're drinking Veuve Clicquot champagne. Who cares?
Rosé. Who cares at this point?
Yeah, who cares? At this point, you give up. But so who are the people? This is the thing. So among younger people who are super successful, who would you be jealous of? I mean, like Hannah Gadsby?
Any of the Kardashians?
No, I, God bless her, God love her, love and light to her and all that, but I despise her. It was like Chinese water torture watching that special.
I couldn't watch it. Did you watch it?
Oh, yeah. I made myself. I gritted my teeth. And I don't like watching comedy in general because
but especially
so much
comedy that's not funny. It's just
yeah.
Trauma,
something where it's just
trauma-informed comedy.
Yeah, because to me, trauma-informed comedy would be laughing at the worst shit possible, not some bizarre lesson that you are trying to force down people's throat, which doesn't elicit, that kind of like soul freeing laughter.
Right.
So anyway, but no, I wrote the piece actually talks about just the moment that my life changed in 2004. And I was in a grad school program to become a teacher. I decided to give up on writing, and it just, and I had a safe little office job, and I would spend my morning Googling people that I had gone to Northwestern with, and I would see, oh, that person just got a staff job at, the New York Times. Oh, that person has a book deal. Oh, that person's a regular commenter on TV. And I decided that because I didn't own any of my former credits, I instead just, draped myself in this,
self-pity,
shawl of shame. And it talks about like realizing that, I'm the only one doing that to myself, and realizing that I could then and there, decide to kind of become a player just the way all these people had decided. So
let me run a theory by you of envy.
Yes, please. I love theories.
Okay, good. This is my theory. If you ever have the opportunity to meet a rich person or a very rich person, you find that they are caught up in envy of the next level right above them. Like, we could all be Jeff Bezos, that's not the thing. Or we could all be Kim Kardashian. They're obsessed with someone they know, like you said about the Northwestern alumni, someone in their social circle who has the G5 private jet and not the G4. Like, everybody envies up slightly. And
and once you realize that it's like trying to defeat death, right. that we are all part of the human condition, and you can kind of laugh at it in a meditative way and not let it suck the life force out of you through, some kind of self-defeating, self-flagellating pity party.
But then how do you do that? Because I think this is where social media has been most pernicious, of course. Everybody puts their best self forward, happy families, great vacations, look at my perfect children. So what is your recipe for cutting the envy impulse out of us? And we all have it. What like, I don't covet private. I do covet private jets.
I think that there's a couple of. I think there's a couple of things, and one is for me, it's kind of like once I can understand the psychological equation underlying something, it's like that has the same effect of Arya jumping up and making the Night King disintegrate. It takes away all of its power. And so, I think that, for a lot of these people that I meet who are young people nowadays, they might know how to, program, their way into Russia's database, but they haven't learned how to kind of like reverse engineer emotional intelligence and psychological skills and theories that will very neatly explain a lot of that existential dread. And when you start to realize certain truisms, like the fact that some people are just fucking with you instead of trying to have everything make sense, or that you are prone to, being more of a neurotic who thinks that they're causing, once you are able to, kind of disintegrate the Night King of shame, envy, self-hatred, jealousy, self-defeating behaviors, that actually is a huge triumph. And I see the relief in people when I'll tell them these things, just because I've read so many books and I've done so much therapy. And it's like I've given people the gift of, taking some 10-pound weight off of them. And yet they still a lot of times won't, go to therapy or, do some of these things that are actually, good for them. So I think that's a big thing.
Just to pick up on one thing you said.
Yeah.
Arya killing the Night King.
Arya, who's a Scorpio, according to some BS thing that I just read online.
Who's
so,
what?
I love
What did you say?
Scorpio.
What did they say? Oh, she's a
Oh,
Scorpio.
I read something that was like breaking down Game of Thrones characters according to the astrological.
Yeah, I don't believe in astrology, but I believe that Arya is Scorpio. And was it awesome? Was it awesome that she killed the Night King and the way she did it?
I don't know what you guys.
Oh, so you don't watch Game of Thrones?
No, I totally do not watch Game of Thrones.
Oh,
I
my
realize
God.
I'm a cultural illiterate, but I want to go back.
No, we're not. We're going to stay with Game of Thrones.
We are so not staying with Game of
We're
Thrones.
going to go. We're going to take a deep dive.
I wanted to go to because we got limited time. I just want to go back to the thing. So what you were saying about envy and all, the therapy, realizing things. In the end, though, you have to be happy, or you have to be able to be happy with your own lot, right? And to be able to put perspective.
And I think that, I talk a lot. That is kind of the journey of my book, which you can buy at unwifeablebook.com,
which is wonderful.
Is learning that, because when there's a moment in the book where I had just left the Post, the New York Post, after being there for like 7 years. I'm living at home with my parents. I'm 36 years old. I've got $200 in the bank, and I'm starting to realize how all of the favor friends and transactional friends have dried up, and you start to see who is actually there for you. And I was dear friends with an actor named Taylor Negron, who was one of the most interesting individual-minded thinkers I've ever met. And he, for some reason, he showed up for me, even though I couldn't do anything for his career. It's so fascinating who ends up showing up for you in life. And he said something to me when I was relating to him some stupid back and forth drama, like an email spat exchange, between me and someone who will remain nameless. And he said, this is just violence, and he was like, fuck this, fuck that. He was like, I don't have time to hear this. I don't want to hear it. It isn't exciting to me. And he said, you need to learn to get excited by a flower. And for some reason, it completely changed. It encapsulated the philosophy that he kind of delivers in the movie The Aristocrats, which is, he talks about, he's done like over 70 TV shows and movies. And there was this time he was at this orgy and everyone was having sex, and someone came up to him and said, "You were great on Friends." And he said, "But Mary Hart is never going to ask me about that." And to me, he encapsulated the philosophy of just enjoying the fuck out of everything, whether you're on a yacht in the most exclusive outside of Richard Branson's private island, or outside of a dumpster fire, that you can have the same amount of fun if you bring a certain level of, a life force spark to it, if that makes any sense.
And maybe gratitude, but
gratitude
and
to
stoicism.
Yeah.
Stoicism. Everyone has to learn stoicism. It makes you happy
too. But
that's about stoicism.
All right, Mandy. But thank you so much for joining us. We hope you will come back again. And
I love you guys.
And we'll have a whole Game of Thrones.
No,
we're going to have a Game of Thrones episode.
No. Sorry,
I didn't know this about you.
Mandy, thank you. We toast you.
Thank you.
And good luck with everything with the paperback.
Thank you so much. Okay, bye.
Bye, darling.
Bye-bye. I find myself working hard all the time on not envying. And it's true, as you get older, your envy decreases. You become, if you're lucky and grateful, you can become satisfied in life. But even
if you're unlucky,
yeah,
if you live long enough and you know enough, you can't understand other people's lives.
Right.
People that you envy, if you knew what was going on,
right,
you would. And then people that you would never think of envying, you should envy them. They have a lot.
Or maybe instead of envying, you look at them and you say, "What can I learn from them?"
Yeah,
to the degree, as you say, that you know about it.
That
I don't need to learn about face tuning my Instagram so I look 30 years younger, although that's a useful skill.
That's kind of useful. I'm working on that. Like lately people have been saying I look old.
What?
Yeah. I mean,
who says that?
I don't know. I'm
going to beat them up.
I'm getting these vibes. On. Okay. I was called out. Some girl called me a grandma, which I'm proud to be. But I think, I don't know, maybe I need a little something.
All right. Well, we'll
work on that.
You're based mom. You're not based grandma.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I am based mom, and that's where I want to remain.
All right. Well, we're going to go to our last guest, our last pass-through on our crazy party, which is Leah Mcsweeny.
Which is, it's perfect that we have Leah at the end because she's my hope for the future.
She is. She's this feisty,
awesome babe, entrepreneur, optimistic.
And one of these people that even though she's primarily a businesswoman, she writes because she's upset about the discourse. She has this sort of passion for truth. We had her on when she talked about, she did this huge expose on the Women's March.
The dysfunction
underlying
completely
stuff.
Perverse politics.
Right.
Collision, in intersectional, radical intersectionality where they just all collided at the intersection of paranoia and anger and bigotry.
Intersection of intersectionality. Oh,
yeah.
Wow. We can't go down that rabbit hole.
But she did.
But she did. And out of this... But also, and I think this is what we share with her, out of this desire for a truthful women's movement of discourse, of welcome, of understanding what are the real problems and, dismissing. There's a meme of you, by the way, when I was Google imaging stuff for our social media. It has you with a glass of wine, and it says, just deal with it. I think,
I have a trove of Christina memes saved on my computer.
You know what?
Whoever wants,
I don't know.
Posters.
Some of them are worrisome. Some are good.
Anyway.
But you know what? My meme is the future. This young woman, her mind, we've just got to replicate it because she's a free spirit. She's a free thinker.
Right.
And she writes for Penthouse sometimes.
That's right. She's also a columnist for Penthouse.
Because that's the new ACLU. Isn't that insane?
Yeah, it kind of is. But anyway, okay. Anyway, let's bring on Leah, and then we'll say our goodbyes after this great party if we're still even a little bit sober.
Well, I can handle my liquor, but Zoe's over there. I don't know what's going on.
Zoe's glass is empty. Let's fill her up.
Let's fill her up.
All right, and bring on Leah.
Leah, welcome to the Femsplainers, to our anniversary episode.
Thanks for having me.
We've been now we've said this so many times to our guests. We're having pink champagne here, and we hope you're able to join us
in a
spirit.
State of sobriety because not me, but Danielle can't handle her liquor.
Yeah, we're getting kind of punchy here, not gonna lie.
And I said Leah instead of Leah, but my Hebrew name is Leah, and you're Leah. That's your Hebrew name.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
But Leah's fine also. I totally don't mind. And by the way, my thing now is I drink kombucha to get a little buzz. You guys probably think that's pathetic.
No, tell us what they are.
I don't even know what that is.
I'm writing it down because I'm going to have one tonight.
I'm so pathetic.
What is it?
It's I don't know too much about it. I just know that it's like a fermented root.
You will not like
it. At every single deli in New York.
That sounds a little like Whole Foodsy. I don't know.
It smells like vinegar. It's not alcohol.
Why, Leah, are you doing this? Why are you drinking that?
Because it's just a safe way for me to get a buzz without going nuts.
Oh, so it gives you a buzz, but it's not alcoholic.
Well, no, there's a tiny little bit of alcohol. Tiny little bit.
That would not work on us.
How are the calories?
It definitely wouldn't work with you. It's low calorie, believe me. Right now I've been tracking all my calories like a mad woman getting ready for summer. So it's only got like 60 calories in it or something.
That's not bad.
No, it's not bad at all.
Well, we just want to applaud you and toast you, if we may, on how visionary you were and vindicated you've been about the Women's March. When we had you on in season 3, episode 1, your article in Tablet had just come out about this whole crazy politics, the extremism. And then you came out with that, and then the larger mainstream
the New York Times could not avoid it.
And then it came out. So you've been pretty vindicated about that.
I have been.
You can do your victory march. It's fine.
You can do your victory.
I was pretty. It was scary to kind of take that dive and that leap, and kind of tell this story. And it could have backfired on me. I mean, but I think I was trying my best to give the women, the women who were not too pleased with what was going on in the Women's March, a voice. So, yeah, I mean, look, I think, I'm just glad that Tablet gave me the opportunity to kind of do the work. And,
And that Women's March, it's just become like a roller coaster to oblivion. I mean, where is it now?
Yeah, will it recover itself in maybe a better way?
No, it can't. They have to change the name. They have to change the name and change the direction.
What do you think, Leah?
Yeah, I think that I don't know if there's, I don't really know what's going on with them. I actually had gotten an email saying that they had abandoned their trademark. Or the fight for the trademark.
Yes, I think that's right.
Trademark issue,
they
right?
They can't own it, right?
And so I think that they kind of abandon that fight for it. And I don't know what that means exactly. I guess it means that it's not as valuable for them to fight for it like it once was, right? They don't want it anymore. So
who would want it?
That's really the last I've heard of it.
So what happens now? Like, we're not going to have our little pink hats and.
What about the pussy hats? Well, they're transphobic, so we don't want them.
Right.
Or they're anti-canine.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I want little doggy hats.
But what happens, do you think? So, yeah, I mean, you're this impressive entrepreneur. You run this company called Married to the Mob. So how do you feel? Like, where do you feel you fit in now going forward? Do you have any,
what my focus is, like, after the Women's March article, I kind of, I've since that time, I've kind of removed myself a little bit from social media. I have to save my energy. Do you know what I mean? And,
save it for what?
Right. I have to save it for my brand that I do. I started another brand that's going to be launching in the summer, and I'm also working on something that is going to be aimed at millennials, at Gen Z as well, that is hopefully going to help make civil discourse a little bit more popular.
What? How? Zoe's here, Gen Z, to weigh in.
We've got a Gen Zer here.
Yeah.
A Gen Zer is on the...
You can make your pitch.
I'm ready.
She's ready. Shoot.
Look, I'm not going to totally divulge everything.
Oh, okay.
I hope when I have it going, I can come back on and talk to you guys about it. I hope that you'll get involved in it. But what I do see is that a lot of, there's things that go on in the city that are kind of like...
New York City, where you are.
In New York City,
The city.
Just like, how I went and you and Dr. So, Christina, you and Dr. So gave a talk a few months ago. And there's little things that go on like that, but I don't feel like it's marketed towards millennials. And I feel like millennials need to hear dissenting opinions and maybe the unpopular opinions. They need to hear it more now than ever. And it's not,
but isn't that the intellectual dark web? Don't we give them dissenting opinions?
Well, no, but also, Leah, I see what you're saying. It's also, I think, what I dislike, not about your idea, which I think is great, this notion that it is unpopular, that there's always that silent majority, to do a cliche. It's just not the noisiest, but getting these alternative
voices heard.
Voices are. Yeah. I mean, this is why we started this podcast.
Right, exactly. And, I think if you take like Instagram and like social media marketing and things like that, and kind of like, how do we like conjoin like that with kind of pushing this like, debate style possibly, or just panels, or I don't know, we have to kind of like make it attractive to young people. Like it's got to have like more of a. I just feel like it's too intellectual. It's like only academia. Like it has to be for everyone.
It has to be woke.
So, no, but I think what you're saying is Christina needs to become an Instagram star. So that means you have to put things like propellers on top of your head and jump off buildings or...
I'm ready to do it.
This is what I said. I want to put Christina on Instagram.
I'm ready to do it.
I think she's ready.
I have an account. I have followers.
Hey, we have Femsplainers podcast.
Follow you.
I have two pictures of Izzy. That's all I've done.
That's on your personal account.
No,
you need a rebrand.
Listen, you got to put your videos, little clips of your videos.
Well, someone has to show me how to do that.
Yeah, well, you know
Zoe.
Listeners, just go to Femsplainers podcast. It's all there.
Yeah, Femsplainers podcast.
Christina is a creature of Twitter, I'm afraid. But I
get Twitter.
Will you promise to come back when you have this amazing, whatever, the next venture that
we want to be part of it. We are there.
But yes, enlarging access to different ideas. I don't even want to call them dissenting. I don't want to call them unpopular. Just
I know,
different.
Reasonable.
I probably shouldn't have called them that.
No. It's you do. It's okay. Well, we want you back, Leah.
Thank you.
And keep us posted. And again, thank you for
congratulations on the anniversary.
Yeah,
we didn't think we'd last 10 weeks.
Christina didn't. I always had faith. But anyway, and that's sort of you're our last guest, so it kind of ends the conversation on a note of optimism, I think.
Yeah, so. She's more optimistic than some of our other guests.
Yeah. Anyway, all right. Thank you, Leah. Good luck with everything,
Thanks so much,
and please
ladies.
do stay in touch.
Thank you.
I absolutely will. Take care.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Okay, well, that's been quite a party. I'm looking at the empty bottle of...
I think that what I have done during this podcast qualifies as binge drinking.
And binge guests.
Binge guesting. And that's a kind of a failure for a podcast. But our guests were so fabulous.
I'm saying it's a failure. That was like an awesome
party. It was awesome.
It was like, never mind. Okay, stop.
Oh, are you going to talk about polyamory?
No, I'm not going to talk about polyamory. Anyway, no, that was wonderful. It's been such a wonderful year. I toast you, my co-splainer. What fun this is, and we hope the fun can continue. I'm going to make a small pitch because now that we're at a year, we need your support because the rosé champagne and
it's not cheap.
all our associated costs of producing this for you without going behind a paywall. We'd be so grateful if you appreciate the conversation, want to join the conversation. Go to patreon.com/Femsplainers or wegather.com/Femsplainers. And you can donate what you can afford. And we have certain levels with certain benefits. And we'd be most grateful if you did that and keep us going. Keep us going for at least another year.
Yeah, we need your help.
Here's to you, listeners. Thank you.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Cheers. Thanks, Zoe. Hey, thanks for listening to the Femsplainers. Stay with us by following us on Twitter and Facebook at Femsplainers and on Instagram at Femsplainers Podcast. You can always email questions and comments to contact@femsplainers.com. We read every one.
We record at the American Enterprise Institute in Washington, D.C. And thanks to AEI Research Assistant Zoe Appler, who is our production assistant here in the studio. And thanks to Nat Frum, our audio and video editor, and occasional millennial mansplainer.
And listen to us on pretty much any of your favorite podcast platforms. And please remember to subscribe and like us at iTunes if possible. Every like helps us keep our solid 5-star rating. Cheers.